In the previous video, we went through what keywords and expressions were. In this video, we're going to talk about statements, whitespace, and indenting, what they are and why they're important within Java applications. So I've created a new project called Statements, Whitespace, and Indenting. So let's start off and just enter a expression. We're going to type the whole line, int, like so. So int, I'll just make a bit more space by double clicking. And if you recall from the previous video when we discussed expressions, we know that the my variable equals 50 is the expression. So what is a statement? Well, a statement is the entire line. So the entire line that reads int space my variable equals 50 semicolon, that is a statement within Java. So that actually is the complete line, if you will. So in this case, by adding the data type at the start to our expression and then finishing off with a semicolon, we've made a valid Java statement. So Java statements can be assignment expressions like the one above, where we're assigning the value 50 to the variable my variable. We could also do something like this. Another statement would be my variable plus plus, which you've seen that before in the operator videos, my variable minus minus, etc. So those types of things that are making a complete statement, but also method calls, which we haven't talked about, but will be much more in the future. That's also a statement. And you've seen this used before when we've used the system.out to print line. That is a complete Java statement because it's got, in this case, a method call and it's got a semicolon on the end with the parameters passed. So semicolon is needed to complete a Java line to make it a statement in most cases, but there are exceptions to that. And as we go through this video, I'll talk more about those. The other thing to keep in mind with statements is they don't have to be on the one line. So in the case above with the system.out to print line, I could have done like so, and Java is actually smart enough to know that, okay, there's nothing here finishing the line, there's no semicolon, so therefore I'm going to continue on the next line. So what it does, it collectively adds all this together and effectively creates the line just as if we had have done something like this. So as far as Java is concerned, that is exactly the same as what we typed in that case below. So with the pluses and so forth, but if we go back and put down what it was before, put back to what it was before, that is still valid as well. So you'll see that in Java code, and often it's a good idea to do that, to break up your code so it makes more sense, so it's more readable. From Java's perspective, it doesn't care if it's on one line or on many lines, provided you're not trying to end the line. So for example, if we tried to put a semicolon there, Java's going to get into difficulty because it's now saying, well, there's no bracket here, and it's expecting a bracket because we put a terminator there. We put the semicolon, which is acting as a terminator to close off the line, so to speak. Get rid of that again, and it should be good to go. So we could just run that to make sure it's working. And we get an error. Why do we get the error? Well, I haven't put the plus there, have I? So I need to put plus, which makes it valid, and now we should be able to run it. And as you can see, we've got the answer over there, so it's working fine. The other thing is you can have multiple statements on the one line. So for example, we could put int another variable equals 5, and we can then put my variable minus minus, like so. So as far as Java is concerned, that is still valid because it's found the separator, and as far as it's concerned, that's exactly the same as if you had typed it like that. Now, often I would recommend not putting statements on the same line because it can get confusing, and it just does take a little bit more effort to figure out whether that's all part and parcel on the same line. But the bottom line is you can put many things on the same line if you want to do that. We could take that even further. We could put, that was IntelliJ adding this to going to the next line. That was something that I did. So we could go back there like so, and that is still completely valid as far as Java is concerned. We can run that, and it's quite happy, as you can see. So you can saw that when I started typing system.out to print line, IntelliJ tried to put it on the next line because it figured it would be better on the next line. But the bottom line is you don't have to do that. You can put them on the same line if you want to. And it's Java looking at it, knowing and knowing, okay, that's a complete statement because we've got something ending in a semicolon, and then it's looked at this and found out that yes, there's a data type, and then there's an expression, that's a valid line. And looking at the code line by line with the semicolons, it's figuring it out. So of course you're going to get into difficulty if you try and not include a semicolon, because it's going to be going, well, hang on, semicolon's expected. Well, there you go, that makes it valid again. So that brings up the concept of whitespace. And the point about whitespace is, so whitespace is the space in between some of your expressions, your operators and so forth. In the example above, for example, I put int, there's a space between the word int and the variable name, which we've discussed before, is to make sure that Java is aware that they are separate things. But whether you had one space or whether you have 10 spaces, Java won't mind. You can even go like something like that if you really wanted to. You can see then that obviously that's probably certainly not the way that I'd recommend you code. But if we run that, Java is quite happy with that syntax, because what it's doing is it's looking at these spaces and effectively it's going to delete out the spaces internally. And as far as it's concerned, it's going to be exactly the same internally as that there. So it will figure it out. So generally speaking, it's a good idea to use spaces to clarify the meaning of particular things. Another common place to put spaces is in between variable names and operators, for example. You can see there I've got a space between the equal sign and the variable name, and likewise between the equal sign again and the literal value of 50 as well. So in general, white space, you can do whatever you like there, and Java will happily ignore the white space and work quite happily. Okay, next is the concept of indentation. So indentation is indenting your code so that it's more readable. So looking at a worst case scenario, if we went back and changed this code and removed all the extra spaces, so I think you'll agree, if you look at that scenario there, that is a lot harder to read to try and figure out where things are as opposed to this version, which is a lot more readable. And you can see that things just sort of stick out a little bit more, and it's just easy to read. So that's the concept of indenting. And generally the concept is you start typing, you normally indent the code from the method definition. And I know we haven't talked about methods yet, but we'll be talking about that. But you can see though, the code blocks, as we're typing in different code blocks, it's actually going into the next level. It's sort of indenting as we go through. So for example, if we had an if there, if my variable equals 50, you notice how IntelliJ, I've just typed the brace and pressed enter, and IntelliJ has automatically gone in 4 spaces. So it did that automatically, and that's indenting it so that when we print that out, it makes more sense. If it didn't do that, the code would look like this. And I'm sure you'd agree it'd be a lot harder to read. So the concept of indenting is to make it easy for you to see the logical flow. Oops, I deleted that. The logical flow of the code. So indenting is important to make sure that things are as they should be. And one of the cool things is you can't really go wrong anyway, because if you do mess up the indenting, and I'm just going to mess up a few things here just to show you, like so. If you do mess it up anyway, what you can do is you can just go up here to the code menu in IntelliJ and you can click on reformat code. And by doing that, that's automatically reformatted it all anyway, and it's re-indented it for you. So when in doubt, go up to the code menu, select reformat code, or you can use the appropriate shortcut, which on a Mac you can see is Command Option L, but that'll be different obviously for a Windows or a Linux platform. So that's statements, whitespace, and indentation. In the next video, we're going to talk about code blocks, what they are, and why they're so useful when coding in Java.